Let's take a look at another issue. The Great Controversy Project. This is a quote from Delbert W. Baker. Delbert W. Baker is a General Vice President for the World Church of Seventh-day Adventists. He chairs the Great Controversy Project Committee, discusses the worldwide initiative to distribute Ellen G. White's book, The Great Controversy, disseminating its last-day message to a world in need of hope. Okay, so now Delbert Baker is going to talk to us about getting the Great Controversy out to the world. Listen to what he says. Excuse me. That's what our General Conference President, Ted Wilson, was referring to when he preached his first message in Atlanta. Do something big and bold for God. Under God, we need to do something bold and get our message out in a very powerful and distinct way. We must tell the world about the message God has given us by sending millions of copies of the Great Controversy around the globe. We think that can be accomplished. President Wilson has challenged all the divisions of the world field, all the departments in the General Conference, all the entities, hospitals, health systems, schools, layman services, industries, independent ministries, publishing houses, supporting organizations, to help us in spreading the Great Controversy like the leaves of autumn. Now, how many of us can disagree with that? Isn't that an awesome project? That's a fantastic project. Yes, Sharita.
I understand that the conference redid the Great Controversy different from what it was when Ellen G. White wrote it.
Sharita?
I was appalled.
That's the next slide.
Sharita, let me tell you, I have a copy. I went to the local Adventist Book Center in Mount Dora, and I asked the man there, I said, have you heard about the Great Controversy Project? He said, oh yeah. I said, I've heard that there have been some changes in the Great Controversy book, just like what you just said. He said, yeah, there have been a lot of changes. Now, the normal Great Controversy book is nearly 700...
1884, Spiritual Prophecy, Volume 4. That's it.
Okay? This is the original. Yeah. The 1911 that I have, it's nearly 700 pages long. This is the Great Controversy book that the General Conference is promoting.
Something seems to be missing.
Well,
That's the first page, the last page, the rest of it's gone.
Fred, that's about it. That's about it. Folk, you know, when I was in Ohio about a year ago, I gave a talk in the afternoon on spiritual formation in which I mentioned Ted Wilson. When I got done at the end of the meeting, a gentleman right over there where Vance is, I can still see him, his name was Tony. Tony raised his hand, he said, but, you know, Pastor Bill, I understand about spiritual formation, but he said, Elder Wilson is really pushing the circulating of the Great Controversy Project. And he's going to get out over 100 million copies of that book. I said, Tony, if that's true, that's great. But even back then, and I told Tony that day, I said, I'm hearing that they have left out huge portions of the Great Controversy book.
And they use new Bible translations.
Well, absolutely, Roberta. Absolutely. Now, folks, notice in this statement that it's repeated that they are going to get out millions of copies of the Great Controversy. And so for a Seventh-day Adventist reading that statement, we're saying, nearly 700-page book is going to go to over 125 million homes around the world? Awesome! Fantastic! Sorry. Going on. This is Delbert Baker still. He says the third benefit of the great controversy is that it has had a way of applying history in a very practical fashion to our lives. So when we read the story about Zwingli, Luther, Calvin, the Reformation, lessons are not simply relegated to the distant past, but they can be applied to our lives today. Now, did you notice those 4 things that Elder Baker mentioned? He said stories about Zwingli, Luther, Calvin, the Reformation. Now, all of that, folk, is in the great controversy. You know what?
Not in there.
It's not in here. It's not in here. At this point, I think it's kind of appropriate. When I
Are they
got...
going to send the rest later or something?
Yeah, right. To be continued.
You know what? Interesting you asked that tongue-in-cheek. A guy in Australia, he came up to me after we talked about this great controversy project. He said that very thing. He said, Bill, you know what I think it is? He said, I think they're using this book as the entering wedge. And then after people get a taste in their mouth and they get excited about what they read, then they're going to write in and they're going to say, I like the big edition of the book. And I looked at him and I said, you know what? I think you've missed the point. The point is not the method of evangelism. Whether this is the entering wedge or whether this is the last wedge. The point is that the General Conference has deceived Seventh-day Adventists worldwide. That's the issue. They're pawning it off as though they are going to be sharing the entire great controversy when they are sending out this. It's a misrepresentation, which another word for that is deception.
A lie.
Yeah, won't that
A lie.
backfire?
That's exactly right. What's that?
Yeah, won't that backfire once everybody knows and then that book is out? Wouldn't that backfire though on
No, they've used spiritual formation so well that they've got everything pretty much.
Not everybody.
A lot of people.
You know, Cindy, a lady in Canada who, from what I can... I'll read you a little bit of this. This is 2 or 3 pages, maybe even more. Yeah, it's 4 pages. I'm not going to read it all. But this gentleman, listen to what he says. He says, hijacked, rip-off, fit to be tied. Those are 3 of the epitaphs we have heard in recent days in reference to the vaunted Great Controversy Project, as announced by General Conference President Ted Wilson in Atlanta in July of 2010. He goes on, he says, he gives some history, and then he says, that's where we all heard and applauded Elder Wilson as he pledged to bring this book before the world. To me, it was a defining moment in his early presidency. If this is what our new president was bringing to the table, then all was not lost in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Most of us watching felt that way. The amen said so. The excited discussions, email, text messages. It was a breath of fresh air. But what happened? What turned our euphoria into outright anger? Having spoken to a key insider this morning, I can tell you this much. What he and millions around the world thought was coming simply has not materialized. The book being pushed has been renamed The Great Hope. And it is all of 11 chapters long, with almost all of the condemnation of Roman Catholicism gone. Huss, gone. Jerome, gone. Luther, gone. Zwingli, gone. The Reformation, gone. The early Advent message and movement, gone. The multiple martyrdoms and wickedness of Rome, gone. As one brother told me just now, that's not the Great Controversy, and they shouldn't be allowed to call it the Great Controversy Project. That is false advertising, plain and simple. Now, I could read, this is 4 pages, the gentleman goes on. Here is the ad that I was given the day that the guy at the local ABC in Mount Dora gave me the Great Hope. This was the ad that was being sent out all over the world. I want to read just a little bit to you. It says this: "It has happened too many times to count. Someone stumbles across a copy of the Great Controversy, and soon they are baptized into church fellowship." Now, is that true? Absolutely, it's true. The Great Controversy, what an awesome book. Brought thousands and thousands and thousands of people into the Seventh-day Adventist message. But the Great Hope, was this the book that brought those people into Adventism? No. No. But it's pawned off as though it is. It goes on. It's the story of some of the outstanding spiritual leaders of the church. John Bradshaw and David Ashery. I can guarantee you that John Bradshaw and David Ashery did not read this book that made them Seventh-day Adventists.
No.
But this ad is saying that it did. And then the quote. Ellen White herself wrote, "I am more anxious to see a wide circulation for this book than for any others I have written. For in the Great Controversy, the last message of warning to the world is given more distinctly than in any of my other books." Cole Porter Ministry, page 127. Now again, folks, when Ellen White wrote that, was she talking about this book?
She wasn't here.
She was talking about the 1884 Great Controversy.
See, to apply this and say that this brought John Bradshaw and David Ashery into the Advent message, and it was this book that Ellen White promoted to be sent all over the world? Friends, again, that's a lie. It is a flat-out lie and deception. It's a deception.
Also, the Bible that Ted Wilson says that he promotes when he wrote his article and review, guess what Bible he quotes out of? New American Standard Version.
Okay. I don't know, Roberta.
I saw it. I've been hunting this up.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Because I kept telling everybody, I said, you know, if he's not a Josiah, he is the greatest deception that has come up on us. And the more I kept seeing this was being said, also in his speech, do you know that he relegated all of our teachings or any new teaching to the BRI, the Biblical Research Institute?
And what message was that?
His first one.
Was it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's at the tail end.
Okay. I'll have to go back. I didn't hear that, but I can go back and listen to that.
Actually, in that picture, it looks like a much beefier book than that thing you showed us. Go back and it looks like a...
This one right here.
Oh, yeah, that is a deception.
That is really.
So wait a minute, you
That looks-
held up one that said the hope? Oh, the great hope.
Hold it up next to it.
Same, but it's different.
Hold it up next to the bell.
That must be the third edition or
Well,
something.
that must be a whole case of them.
Oh, that's kind of sneaky right there.
That is so vulnerable. Come a little closer,
It looks
you'll
like
find it smaller.
The great hope, folks, that's the message of the true great controversy. It leaves out the chapters that deal with the early Christian era, the Dark Ages, Huss, Wycliffe, the Reformation, the early rise of Adventism. It never clearly discloses the working of the papal anti-Christian system. It's a bold-faced lie and deception, for it isn't the great controversy we know. It leaves out the distinctive truths that makes the great controversy the book that it is. You know, folks, the thing that I find in a trend from the first sermon by the President of the General Conference to this project is the obliterating from the minds of Seventh-day Adventists the last two messages that we've been given as a people. In this book, you do not see clearly that the image of the beast, or Babylon of Revelation 14:8, is the apostate Protestant churches of today. It's not clear in this book. And it was not in the first sermon, even though the first sermon was on the three angels' messages. In this book, you do not see, and I've read this book, you do not see clearly who the Antichrist is. You do not see who the beast is of Revelation 14:9.
Tell you who the synagogue of Satan is?
That I don't remember. I was specifically, Melanie, looking for direct references to the second and third angels' messages. And they're not there. It wasn't in his opening sermon. It's not in this book. And folks, what I'm seeing in these things is there has been a concerted drive within the denomination for the last 60-odd years to push under that the papacy is the Antichrist, to push under the rug that the apostate Protestant churches are Babylon fallen since 1844. Those messages are getting pushed and pushed and pushed so that we never hear them anymore. And that has been the trend of the current General Conference president.
They use the excuse they want to soft up things so